Hello, nice to be here, my pleasure. So there are a lot of interesting things going on in the world, and I suspect there's a lot of interesting things going on in your world. But how are you handling them? How are you observing them? How are you engaging with them? Are you a glass half full person or a glass half empty person? So let's take a little bit of time and talk about this. I'd like to say welcome to a lot of you that are new. It's kind of fun to see new people showing up. A lot of you have been around for a long time. So please ask questions. One of the things about doing this is it's all about you and it's all about your questions. But let me take a couple of minutes to really set this up. What's going on in the world? It depends on where you look at it. If you look at it from the proverbial 50,000 foot level, what you're watching is a world that is spiritually driven, that we've been playing a game for a long time, and the game is coming to a conclusion. It's really that simple. And there is choices as to how we navigate that conclusion. Some people will argue with the conclusion, argue with the change, be happy with status quo or being unhappy with status quo. And others will begin to recognize that there's other choices. So let's look at it from the standpoint of this shift spiritually into 5D, or kind of maintaining a position in 3D. All of this is about layers and how you look at it from the standpoint of layers. So if you drop down from that 50,000 foot level to, I don't know, 25,000 feet, what you begin to see is a lot of 3D. You see war, you see climate change, you see major displacement on the planet, people being displaced from their homes. Really disruptive stuff. But at the same time, is there an opportunity there? Is the glass half full or half empty? You bring it down a little bit more, and you bring it down into kind of the personal space where there's work and family and money and housing. People kind of live their life. Don't pay attention to a whole lot. Go to work, come home, family. And then if you drop it down to another level, where a great part of the world is in basic survival. The basic needs, the same kind of needs: food, shelter, housing. Depending on how you experience, how you choose being the operative word here, how do you choose to play in each one of those layers? Because you're actually in, or have the opportunity to recognize opportunities in each one of those layers. So it's a fascinating place we play. And one of the purposes of mastering alchemy is, how do I choose to transition between this 3D world, where there's a lot of noise, and I'm not really clear about what's going on. I have a sense that I don't have a lot of say in and over what's going on. There's a lot of truth to that. But when I begin to organize myself, when I begin to be grounded, be in present time, begin to be more clear, recognize that I have choices, then you have opportunities. So this 3D world that we're playing in this shifting to 5D, there's really two things going on. There's a lot of disruption, and there's a lot of opportunity. And it just depends again on, is the glass half full or half empty? So let's talk about that somewhat in this session. One of the things that I just got done doing in this last week is attending a conference with people who are really rich, very wealthy, very well-to-do people. And the whole purpose of it was looking at the macro economy, kind of the big game going on in the world. And from their point of view, they look at it from money, they look at it from inflation, they look at it from power and control, they look at it, if there's a war, where do I invest my money to not be caught up in the war, those kind of things. But it was really very interesting also because that grouping of people, within that grouping of people, there were a lot of people that simply said, you know, this is really shaky what's going on. This level of inequity, this level of the 1% owning 30% of the world's wealth, or a company like Walmart, the 6 members of the Walmart family, having more money than 30% of the basic world population, the lowest 30% of the population in the United States. So pretty disruptive pieces of inequity and balance that are going on here. And at the same time, many of those people were simply saying, from their point of view, my me space is about making money, taking care of my family, taking care of my needs. But I went to this conference last year, and what I'm hearing a lot differently is this year is more people are saying something's wrong here and we have to fix it. So that was pretty encouraging, listening to that part. But one of the things that plays out here is, and I want to say something that's going to sound contradictory because it's all about you and me, it's you got to pay attention to what's going on. And the next thing out of my mouth is stop paying attention to what's going on. So that's kind of a contradiction, but actually it's not. The paying attention part is noticing what's going on without putting your finger into that light socket, without jumping into it, without having a reactionary response to it. At the same time, noticing what's going on and kind of being able to see, is it going to affect you? It is affecting you. Climate change, inflation, change in how money is being constructed, major shift in that concept. We'll talk about it in a minute. But the point is, if you're watching CNN, you're watching Fox News, you're listening to all of the counterculture, it's noise. It's simply noise. It has most likely very little to do with you. And yet, if you get caught up in it, you get some really wobbly things going on. So, but inside the noise, there's a signal. And the signal is really clear. Everything is moving in this direction, a direction. And if you can pay attention to the signal and not get distracted by the noise, the opportunity to begin to choose in your best interest, your family's best interest, the people around you's best interest, begins to be very relevant to each of us. So this shift that we're in, moving from 3D to 5D, moving from a disruptive environment, 3D, to 5D. You know, we've said this all many times before, but basically you can't take your baggage with you on this trip into 5D. We'll call 5D just well-being. In this state of well-being, you have choice, you have opportunity, you have laughter, co-creation, well-being, all the things that if I said to you, if you could create the perfect world for yourself, what would that be like? How would you wish to experience yourself? That's 5D. In fact, you're probably missing a massive amount of the opportunity, the joy that comes along with that. 3D, right now, challenging. Climate change, war, inflation, disruption. But even in that space of 3D, if you can begin to take the time to ground, take a breath, be in present time, get quiet, and notice what's going on, the ability to step out of 3D into this 5D space that's evolving, you're going to find that there's a lot of ease in that space. There's a lot of opportunity in that space. So this shifting place, what are some of those opportunities that come about? If you notice from a place where you get comfortable with yourself and you step out of the noise, an awful lot of the disruption in your space is simply the noise. And noise, in this case, let's define it as thoughts you think and feelings or emotions you have. Those feelings and emotions, those thoughts, to a great extent, aren't even yours. Now, if you think about it, if you're a person that plays in the noise, what gets you off balance? Well, I listen to the news, or I listen to what they said, or he said, she said, and this is right and that's wrong. All third dimensional duality, all very reactionary. And one of the things that's happening, kind of side piece here, I know there's a question that's coming up in a minute about anxiety and this kind of electricity running through my body. Very real, because right now there is a huge magnetic shift on the planet. And that magnetic shift, if you're not grounded, if you're not being quiet, if you're not observing, that magnetic, electromagnetic shift is now running through your nervous system. It's going to continue to run through your nervous system. On one hand, it's an amplification of the opportunity to step into the 5D space. You find if you can hold well-being and happy and begin to recognize I don't need to pay attention to the noise, that electromagnetic field begins to be coherent. It's elevating you, it's rising up in the body, it's changing the body, it's changing the planet, it's changing nature. But if you hold your finger in the light socket, the culture wars and all of the worry and the anxiety about things that aren't yours, you're going to find that anxiety and that nervousness increasing over the coming days, months, years. That level of nervousness is interfering in the or anxiety, magnetism is interfering with the nervous system, which simply is beginning to be a wobble in the physical body. Illness is probably going to increase in that off-balance state. So something to pay attention to. Opportunities, grounded, present, aware, paying attention to what's going on, not the culture wars, but kind of what's going on. There are amazing things that are going on, structuring this world that we're stepping into. And so much is happening, much is about to happen. You're going to find disruption in the physical world that we live in. You're going to see things like recession. Recession is now at a point where it virtually has to happen. It's not that it could be avoided, it's past that point of avoiding. And so what happens, recession, it's an interesting word, it means everything begins to be pulled back. All of this disruption that was created by coronavirus, I'm going to say that positively minus all the deaths, created a disruption in the system of 3D, in that hypnotic structure of where everybody just simply gets up, goes to work, comes home, turns on television, falls in bed, gets up and does it again. And all along the way they don't have enough. And so that space is in the process of being disrupted. Coronavirus created a space where everybody got to move away from what they were in that hypnotic structure of doing, and in that process of moving away, they kind of woke up and began to recognize, I don't like this, I can choose differently. In that choosing differently, people have now moved around and things are going back to normal. Well, actually they're never going to go back to whatever was normal. But what is happening right now is all of the pieces are broken and they're still moving around. And they're going to be moving around for quite some time. So when you start hearing people say, well, supply chain's being fixed, it's not being fixed. It's a massive complex. And so if you've ordered a refrigerator or a dryer or a freezer lately, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because they say, yes, we'll take your order, but it'll be 6 to 9 months before your refrigerator is delivered. Well, that's not how it used to be. It's not how it's going to be. It's going to be disruptive. It is disruptive. So the opportunity is very much here. So let me stop there, just kind of setting up the nature of this space that we're going to play. And let me take questions because there's quite a few questions. And let's talk about how you begin to observe the world around you without being in the world around you and beginning to recognize opportunity. Now, one of the things being kind of in that hypnotic state, we don't ask questions. And what happens when you don't ask questions, you want to step back beyond that and say, what's interesting to me? What would I like to know about? Curiosity sits behind that. And what sits behind that is imagination. And so let's talk in questions here about imagination, because in this 50 realm of consciousness you're stepping into, imagination becomes the driver of the creation. And it's really fascinating how it's unfolding very rapidly. So let me just stop there as a little frame of reference for this conversation. And let me turn it over to Roxanne and see if there's some questions we might talk about.
There are indeed. Hi, everybody. So when you ask your question, let us know where you're from, because I'm noticing there's people from Belgium, Spain, Romania, all over the world, and that's really cool. And also let us know if you're a new listener or if you have tools, the Mastering Alchemy tools on your tool bench, because that will kind of help Jim answer your question to where you are. So this first one, Jim, is from Mark in Spain about your conference. So are you saying the 1% are finally considering uplifting the marginalized?
Well, they are recognizing that there is something out of balance. And the conversation is both a recognition and a fear, because enough people are wise enough that they are aware that if this imbalance continues to go, in this structure of culture wars, in this structure of liberal conservative, in the nature of authoritarian power versus cooperative creation, that there's a big clash coming. And if you continue to take from the middle and lower classes economically of peoples that don't have, you're going to have massive social conflict. You saw it start over the last 4 or 5 years. You see it in things like the January 6th in the US Capitol incursions. You see this reactionary nature of something's wrong and I have to respond to it. There's a social revolution that's in the making, whether you like it or not, or whether you label it one way or another. Both sides are correct. Both sides are correct. Even these people that are the ones that are talking about in these economic situations, there's a whole aspect of these people are really, I'll go to the point of saying, very nervous about the disruption of the system. And they're recognizing that the imbalance of money and the imbalance of power is what's going to bring about something that nobody wants to see. And so there's an awareness of this disruption coming about. But would I go as far as saying there's a new light in the ultra wealthy? No. But there's a new recognition.
Jim, here's a question from Shari, who is online here. Thank you so much for your morning chats. I think Shari is referring to morning conversations. I feel less alone in my awareness with you guys. Could you talk a bit about our different energy bodies and the magnetic/electrical nature of each? Thank you.
So you have a number of bodies, and the ones that you're mostly interested in is the physical body, the etheric body, which most people call the astral body, and the mental emotional body, because those three are what you play in virtually all the time, whether you're conscious of that or not. And so one of the key pieces of this shift is you move into this fifth dimensional space. A lot of people, well, once you recognize you can't take your baggage with you, you can get rid of the I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I'm not attractive, I don't fit, nobody loves me, etc. stuff that we all walk around with that have bumped into somewhere in life. I didn't know what to do with it. That's really disruptive. I'm afraid of this. Does that mean I'm not okay? and I can't handle it, so I'm going to put it back here in the backpack, and I'm going to forget about it. And then I'm going to pay attention to this thing that happened to me in my past. I hope it doesn't happen to me in my future. And so you get locked into this linear time construct, which most people in 3D believe time is simply linear, and that's all there is. We'll talk about that in a few minutes also. So this shifting of attention is really what determines the body you mostly play in. As you start to play with the tools, mastering alchemy tools, to get grounded, to find the center of your head, to begin to recognize I can disrupt this backpack. In fact, very simply, can I remove I'm not okay? Once you begin to clean all of that out, the ability to start to pay attention to that mental, emotional body and being able to recognize it's not two bodies, it's one. And when you begin to put it back together and recognize I can manage my thought in present time and I can choose how I wish to engage with what's in front of me. That is really a big deal. Sounds very simple, but as you get rid of the I'm not okay, that alignment of I can observe, I can be aware of what's there, I could get angry, but I'm going to choose differently and hold a different feeling in my body. That's a really big deal. And once that begins to happen, the ability to start to recreate yourself in a way that allows you to step into this etheric body. This etheric body is fascinating because it's becoming more and more conscious. It is very much a space you play in the fifth dimensional space. You basically start to turn on aspects of yourself and begin to perceive what's there from a whole different point of view. Different point of view being quiet, present, aware. I'm observing, I'm choosing how I wish to deal with this. Very simple set of words, but impossible to experience when my focus is on I'm not okay. So that mental, emotional body, physical body, etheric body begin to line up in such a way that actually you start to perceive vibrations like anger or resentment. I see it over there, but I'm going to choose not to understand it by dragging it through my body physically, destroying the cellular structure of the body, that's called death, beginning to hold more and more of that anger, rage, resentment, which simply begins to dissipate the cells. In the etheric body, I know what that is, but I don't have to bring it through the physical body. And that's a big part of this shifting into this fifth dimensional space of well-being, being able to choose an experience and then create the experience you wish to have in its place.
Jim, this one is from Norma, who's also with us today. I'm wondering if I'm the only one out there who's having a great deal of physical pain. I'm running the golden liquid light and going into the etheric body. Anything else I can do, or what's causing this?
So you got a lot of years, most likely, of building up wear on the physical body, and that's physical. You built up the wear. So when you begin to take the anger, the resentment, the stuff in the backpack out of the physical body, begin to take it out of the mental, emotional body, the physical body begins to regenerate itself. But, you know, if you've got a torn meniscus in your knee, you have a torn meniscus in your knee. You can begin to create ways of creating less pain, but a lot of the physical damage is done, and most of that physical damage is at that level, at the bone level, for example, is going to take some time to reheal.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, wait, you didn't talk for 20 minutes.
So this one is from Angela, who's also online. Can you talk a bit about the importance of the work park bench to cross these times?
Yeah, park bench is really a big deal. So one of the things that we've been doing is, between Mastering Alchemy, Park Bench, the advanced webinars, is kind of 3 courses are going on at one time. The purpose of Park Bench was very much about creating this new realm of consciousness. And so sometimes you start to say, a spiritual person says, yes, that's got to happen. I'm really looking forward to it. But what you've been doing over the last, really going on 2 years now in this park bench, is creating that realm of consciousness. It's like building, think about it, on your television, you've got channel 4 and channel 5, and channel 4 has no idea what's going on channel 5. But what you're doing is you're beginning to bring channel 4 and channel 5 closer together so that there's more of an awareness of what's going on. And so building that architecture, that landscape, the environment, and starting to hold these chosen feelings and attention points, respect, dignity, kindness, into the architecture of this new realm is actually coming closer and closer to the point where you're able to hold on to it more and more. Will it become physical? Yes, it will become physical. Is it going to happen next week? No, not into the physical. But in the mental, emotional body, you begin to realign yourself in what we've been talking about, this octave that's been raising up over the last 6, 8, 10 months, and now is becoming anchored. It begins to be a vibrational bridge between channel 4 and channel 5, or channel 3 and channel 5 here specifically. And what happens is you start to hold your attention in that space, and the physical body begins to adjust. It gets more comfortable. The mental emotional body begins to simply start to function from the alignments that are in that new realm. And so many of you play there, you know what it feels like when you sit down to do it. But do you go back to the park bench between the time of each session, the time between the sessions? It's really being able to hold those vibrations and look to the joy of that octave to begin to shift your entire personality into that realm of consciousness. There was a lot going on with that, and coming in the next number of months, we'll play with it in a little different format.
Jim, because of that question of Angela's, we're getting some other questions about park bench, so I just want to let everybody know that tomorrow, let me back up. So there's been 3 series of park benches. The first one was 20-some sessions. The next one was 5. This one is 4. This one 5. Is 5 too, yeah. Right. And tomorrow is the last session of this series. However, we're going to begin another series, the last one, most likely, beginning May 15th. And that's not in the store yet. Hopefully this weekend I'll get it posted. And all the recordings are in the classroom. So if you haven't taken anything, you haven't missed a thing. All the recordings are right there for you.
So let's just add a little bit while we're talking about it. So there's going to be one more 4 or 5 part series, and it's very much about holding the door open. You know, in Mastering Alchemy, when we started this, and the conversation with Metatron was about a new pathway that's never been walked. And he basically said, this is about your evolution, your personal ascension, personal remembering and stepping out of what you are in 3D. Re-elevating or elevating the earth back into its kind of 12th dimensional, fully Christed state of consciousness, because it lost that state. And then holding the door open for all of humanity and beyond humanity on this planet, because there's a lot of spaces within all that is that are in that 3D construct. Simply ending 3D, opening the door for people to move forward. So we've been doing, everything is related to those 3 focuses. And now we're at that point where your own evolution, very much in the first part of Park Bench, beginning to build a new realm and beginning to experience that new realm, very much about your own personal evolution. And those you playing in Mastering Alchemy, beginning to be aware of how to clear that backpack and step into a different strata of consciousness, your evolution. The Earth part, in this last series, in the current finishing up the series, about evolving the earth, and very much has to do with the elementals. And so we've been talking about that. We'll continue to talk about the elementals in the next piece. But this next piece is holding the doorway open, bridging a reality between that channel 3 and channel 5, beginning to create a vibrational field of light that all in the house get to see, really meaning all the people on the planet begin to see a choice. And this is a really interesting place where this game plays. Let me just add a piece I was going to say at the beginning and didn't. Is you got a war going on right now, and you've got an individual, basically one individual, disrupting the entirety of the planet. Now that's amazing all by itself. Now the first thought is, how's that possible? And clearly this is a bad dude. But it's interesting when you go back to that 30, 50,000 foot mark, and if you had the opportunity to listen to a channeling that Jeff Hoppe with Adamus recently did, one of the things he said, we want to make it really clear that Putin has two lives that playing out here. One, a real barbarian. He was absolutely a barbarian. I thought they were going to say Genghis Khan, but they didn't. Where rape, murder, pillage, that was all there was about that particular lifetime that he played. And in another lifetime in St. Petersburg, he was incredibly benevolent, really helpful for the people, incredibly uplifting, to the point where they entitled him St. Peter. And now you got Putin sitting there driving the world. And I'll refer to this in a minute, but basically the world has almost no choices. Again, I'll talk about it in a minute. And so here you've got a person in that channeling. Adamus basically said he's actually pretty neutral in this lifetime. He's simply creating a circumstance as a spiritual being for the world to choose. Do you choose to continue on this 3D path, or do you choose another path of benevolent kindness, unity among people? And it's almost as a personality, Adamus said, Putin's just stepping back. Now, he's creating the drama and the outrage and asking the question, how do you choose? Same question we keep asking, how do you choose? So not making him a good guy, bad guy here at all, that's not the point. There are outrageous things going on, but how do you choose? Do you play the 3D game and take sides? Or, like many of you, can you step into that 5D space, park bench space, and begin to radiate a level of light into the world, into the conflict, into Ukraine, into Russia? The people of Russia are not the ones to blame here or throw rocks at. They're suffering also. So how do you begin to raise consciousness to the point where we're just simply not going to play this? Now, let me step back and go to this conference that I just came from. Really interesting people. One of them, an amazing person, woman who grew up the daughter of a United States admiral whose job in the Nixon administration was to basically create balance between China and the United States, between Russia and the United States. She grew up in that. He was a negotiator in the Cuban crisis that brought it to an end. So this daughter grows up in that family, and she is brilliant. And she's a strategic thinker, and basically said, a month and a half ago, I sat with all of the generals in NATO, including Milley in the United States, and basically instructed them, provided them information about Putin. She's a world-class Russian authority. And she basically said, he's going to go in and he's going to attack. And they said, no, no. She said, we're telling you, he's going to go in and attack. And so he goes in and attacks. So she's got that kind of status to be able to step into those levels. She said, it's really interesting, something most people don't understand about Putin is he follows an occult path, a psychic path. He's got one of the most predominant psychics in the world instructing him. This psychic comes out of the Rasmussen school, which is a whole school in Europe. Many of you know about that. He goes to Hungary and has 100,000 people, the psychic. And the psychic is about Mother Russia is the savior of the world. And they believe that in such a way that it doesn't matter whether you basically destroy the entire world, Russia will be the authority. Putin believes this, and he believes that he's St. Peter. So you've got this mindset going on. Now, when you hear that from a military strategist, that this is what's driving the game, and out of that economic conference, one of the things became really clear. Right this minute, nobody has any specific structure to interfere with what's going on. There's a very big concern that if Putin gets killed, something that's referred to as the dead man switch in this vernacular, that he's got a structure all put together that if he dies, there's an instruction that says, go push that nuclear button. These people made it really clear. If NATO steps into Russia in any way beyond those lines of agreements, Putin will push the nuclear button. They don't believe the nuclear threat is to New York City, London, major world centers like Hiroshima nuclear experience. What Putin is all about is reclaiming the boundaries of Russia. Now, when you start talking about the boundaries, Alaska, Seattle, the west coast of the United States, in the original mapping way, way back, were all part of Russia. And so when you have a mindset that says, I have to rebuild Mother Russia, you have another interesting construct when you go to China, because the intention of the current Chinese structure is to regain the original Chinese map, which includes massive parts of India, as well as on and on. So you've got these authoritative power structures out there all pushing, and they're pushing from different aspects, but it's all about power and control. And so in a way, you step back and 50,000 foot level, interesting. You can see the spiritual game going on. Take it down a level, you can see the war game going on. Take it down other levels, you see massive disruption in people's realities. But take it down to your personal level. What can you do? And so I can give a lot of attention to my 3D lack, my worry, or I can sit here and basically start to recognize if I'm grounded, center my head, on my side of the rose, taking a breath and being the spiritualist that I came here to be, how do I create a level of light that I project into a space with the sole purpose of providing people the opportunity to choose? And so if Putin's construct is, I don't care which way it goes, as a spiritualist, be real clear, I'm not talking about good guy, bad guy, as a spirit, basically creating the opportunity. What happens in the next months, not years, years too, but next months, are really going to be very telling about the speed in which the world steps into this fifth dimensional reality. And so the question, the one that's always on the table, how do you choose? And it becomes very personal. How do you choose? You're sitting here right now listening to this. How do you choose? Are you conscious? Are you kind of going, oh, this is interesting? Or are you, I'm right here, recognizing I have choice to influence the entire game? So, little insert, as usual, into a question.
This one is from Valerie, who is in level 1, and Valerie lives in Montreal, Canada. I'm interested to hear more about the word you use, opportunity in 5D, or the sentence in the title of today's webinar, you might be surprised at what you may not be seeing.
Yeah. So, in spite of all the things that you do see, the inflation, the disruption, the to pay attention to food on the grocery shelves, all of that disruption is really easy. You see it, you can understand it, you hear it on the news, etc. But what you don't hear about is really fascinating things that are going on, and some things that you'd think were like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Except there's a company in Israel, for example, who's figured out how to take the specific molecule from the red grape skins, which is incredibly a powerful antioxidant. How do you take the peptides from another molecule of food? How do you take the phenylanolines out of certain types of foods? And how do you take those molecules and combine them in such a way that you have all of the aspects of the food's value at a very high level, and it simply comes as a drink? It's not food being grown in the fields. It's a construct of natural food, not synthetics, that basically can be organized into a brand new food that's basically going to be provided to the world. Pretty remarkable. You have things that are pretty clear in terms of vertical farming is beginning to become something that is very real. You can take 1/4 acre of the mechanical space of growing in a building, and you can produce the equivalency of 40 acres of food from that 1/4 acre in the vertical farming mechanisms. You have quantum computing that's coming into the play that is going to basically just redirect how information flows and what's valuable in ways that you can't get to the level of problem solving. You have 3D printing happening that is now to the point where it can build buildings, a 3D printer taking materials at a molecular level or at a plastic level and constructing them into very complex structures for housing and building, for example. And this goes on and on and on. Biomedicine, you've got incredible things that are occurring there. Nanotechnology, incredible things. But biomedicine, in gene therapy. Now, what people don't understand is you can look at this negative, like gene splicing, and you can create a distortion of a new human being or whatever kind of distortions you want. You can think about that, but go to the positive side. Basically, you can, I mean, they've got it down to where $1,000 machine put into locations around the world allow you to begin to do gene splitting to take out sickle cell anemia in the black population. Just simply take it out of the mix. Cancer treatments, different types of regrowing of bones and tissues. So you're watching, in a lot of ways, Star Trek coming into human reality. You know, way back in the 60s, everybody went, oh yeah, wouldn't that be cool if I could beam me up Scotty? Well, beam me up Scotty may not be so far off in the future, but everything else that's going on is actually here and now starting to be real. And that list goes on and on and on of some pretty phenomenal things. One more thing, you will see an entirely different means of financial transactions and money, I'm going to say by 2030. Now, don't go run out and buy Bitcoin. Very real changes are going on in the world financial systems. And the real key here is, does the government control the digital currency, or do the people control the digital currency? At the moment, that game is moving towards the people controlling it, and the government is behind the curve, all the governments. China just simply said, we're not going to do this at all. And at the same time, they're putting together a stablecoin currency for their own uses. So you're watching these dynamics, and very likely, I'm going to predict that the people are going to actually manage the currencies going forward. Blockchain, Bitcoin is what most people hear. It's so much bigger than that, so much bigger, and very complex and growing at a rapid pace where even the people that I talk to that are absolute immersed in this, they just simply say, we can't keep up. It's unfolding so fast. So fascinating things. You're about to see a world in a 5D space, in a comfortable space, in your body in the next 15 years. That's going to be very different. You're also going to see massive changes that are going to be disruptive in the next 15 years.
Jim, this one is from Melissa in Sonoma County. Wow. My waking life has been abundant and happy. However, my dreams have been really wild and sometimes disturbing. What tools do you recommend? I used to be more grounded. No. What tools do you recommend I use to be more grounded in my astral space?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of this is an interesting space, your sleep space. So we're going to divide it for simple purposes into your dream space and let's call the rest sleep space, which is where you go home every single night, but you pass through the dream space. The dream space is one of the things that's going on in the dream space is the brain needs sleep. And one of the components of your sleep is in the brain a way of making emotional adjustments. And those emotional adjustments to a great extent happen in your dream spaces. They don't, not trying to make sense of them, it's emotionally making adjustments. Also in that, I just lost where I was going to go with that one. So grounding your space before you go to bed, cleaning out your day before you go to bed. You know, create that rose. Who got in my space? Where did I leave myself? 2 questions. Collect you back, give back to others that are in your space, and make a decision that when you go to sleep, you're going to go into that new realm that you're all creating. And basically, be in that octave when you go to sleep. Just simply start to be in that joy, ease, that lightness, the buoyancy, the excitement of stepping into that octave. It's going to allow you to basically begin to adjust, this gets complicated, the magnetic shift on the earth that's affecting the brain and also affecting your dream space. And so setting the intention, moving through it and intending to come back into the octave in the morning when you wake up is going to start to interrupt some of that magnetic, electromagnetic change that's going on in the brain. This is all kind of a new piece of information that's starting to get more and more clear, but that's what I would suggest.
You know, another thing that I do, Melanie, is, no, Melissa, sorry. One thing that I do before I go to sleep too, and then if I wake up in the middle of the night, I reinforce it, is I ground the bed. And I ground the 4 corners of the room just to make the environment itself more grounded. So you might play with that and see if that works for you.
Let's just add to that. So let's take those of you playing in park bench, you know that sensation, that feeling, that sense of beauty and well-being in that landscape that you're creating. Go to sleep in that. I mean, literally, like Roxanne's saying, make that the room you are going to sleep in. Expand that whole concept rather than just your head. Simply recognize I'm in this space and this is what I'm now experiencing. See what happens.
This one is from Olga, who's in level 3. Hey, Olga. I'm curious, how can recession bring new opportunities, especially around money?
Well, let's back up. Let me just talk about, let's say coronavirus. When coronavirus happened, nobody was saying there's some value to this. And what happened in coronavirus, it became so disruptive that it upset the apple cart, in a manner of speaking. Where we're going right now is, see, the odd part is the consumer is ordering all kinds of things. They're buying all kinds of things. And all those things that are being bought, they're not being able to be made because of the disruption that we've had. And so one of the things that the federal government, it doesn't matter federal government, central banks all around the world, they have been injecting billions of dollars into the game. In the United States, you had that massive injection of money going to people to offset the unemployment circumstance of coronavirus. Well, when you start to look at how things flow through the system and you take $3 trillion and you put it into the system, people begin to spend money. And as they spend it, one of the things that's happening right now, there's no place to spend it. You listen to these people in the economic conference, virtually across the board, they can't find a place to put all the money. And so what happens is it keeps being spent in such a way that the growth of the system is now down to where you have you have about 3% unemployment. It's accelerating, and so people have money. They begin to spend money. The cost of something goes up. They spend more money. Cost of something goes up. And so what you're watching is this inflationary cycle beginning to really begin to get out of whack. When it gets to this level, there's only a handful of things that can be done to bring it back into balance. And one of the things is stopping growth. And so you're going to see the way they do that is they keep increasing interest rates. And you're going to see the interest rates increase about 8 times in the next 24 months and maybe less. And so all of a sudden, if you're interested in borrowing money, no way to do it. Buy a car, no way to do it. You can't afford it. And so this growth factor stops. So all of a sudden people are no longer having jobs because nobody's making things, because nobody's able to buy things. And so you have this cycle, and there are always cycles. The cycle usually lasts about 7 years. This time the cycle has been forced into 12, 13 years before there's an adjustment. And so all of these pieces are coming into play to where you're going to see a recession. It's right there in front of you. It's probably not going to happen until 2023. So there's more time for this to happen, but you're going to see this occur. So,
Jim, here's a question from Janet. Can you discuss muscle testing as a means to make decisions on what works well for our body's energy?
You know, muscle testing, pendulums, looking for a yes-no answer from that internal guidance system, all work around your, all work. But beyond that, I don't have a lot of things to say about that. I used to play there a long time ago. It was always interesting, but no, I don't have anything to really add.
The only thing I would add, Janet, is that if you believe it is or you believe it isn't, you're right.
You're correct.
So if that works for you, use it by all means.
Yes.
Let's see. Got a lot of questions here I'm sorting through. This one is from Yvonne. Why do the climate scientists say that it's too late now? I don't believe that Mother Earth is dying, but ascending. Is it too late like they say?
Well, you're correct. The Earth is ascending, and there is some challenges. Now, quite often what happens when we don't know something, we make assumptions about this is going to be the outcome. Now, the challenges to the Earth are very real because of human actions on one hand, but we're in a cycle. And this cycle is now at the point where the Earth is in the process of making a whole series of changes. And then you go to this aspect of shifting from 3D world mindset, greed, domination, imposition, which is held, no, don't go there. That whole level is changing, spiritual shift into 5D. So you're watching the world change. And one of the reasons in Park Bench that we've been playing with the elementals is because many of the people playing in elemental have been in mastering alchemy for a long time. And there's been an evolution of the human elemental interaction over the last 10 years. And right now, one of the objectives is, we've been talking in Park Bench about mycelia in the mushrooms, in the fungi arena, and how it's an electromagnetic field of communication and well-being. It gets into the roots of the plants, etc., etc. But it is the identical communication system to our nervous system. Identical. And so when you can begin to, as the people playing in Reset 3, and also in tomorrow's Park Bench, is we begun to play with that relationship of the elemental's nervous system and the human nervous system. And that integrating point is one of the pieces that we're going to play in tomorrow's Park Bench, is blending and becoming one with the elementals. And if you stay out of your rational mind and you play within the octave and you play within the new realm and you basically say, what does the new earth look like? You're the creator being that works with the elementals to reflect back to you that nature of what you know about oneness. And so you begin to start to think thoughts about the earth, and it starts to play out in such a way that the opportunity to create from your etheric body, from your going home, all that you know space, into what the new earth looks like is amazing. Things that you cannot even imagine right now are going to happen. You're going to see deserts very rapidly turn into 200-foot tree forests. Not hard. There's a tree that's known as the Palowena Tree in central bandwidth of the equator, very much in Central America. And this tree grows 20 feet a year. The leaves are about 2 feet in diameter, and it absorbs carbon from the atmosphere at a greater rate than any other plant on the planet. That's just one of many that are going to start to begin to reappear in parts of the world. Not today, but in the new realm that you're creating. And so major things are going to happen in this process that you can't see right now. And those of you playing in Park Bench, playing in Mastering Alchemy, playing in Reset 3, it's all about building this new earth and taking it up. And the elementals are very capable of creating what you tell them to create. And it's a co-creation. It's not a power over. But interacting your nervous system with the elementals' singular nervous system is what this whole aspect of Park Bench has been about.
Jim, this one is from Renee, who is in level 2 and lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Could you say more about what you said previously about the fifth dimensional diet is vegetarian?
Yeah, so you don't eat animals in the fifth dimension. The animals, one of the other really fascinating things, see, I love this, because I get to, in that sleep space, you all have consciousness available to you. I just get to tap into it in ways that are really fascinating. But you're gonna talk to the animals. You're going to simply engage with the animals. You're not going to eat the animals. And these places where new food constructs are going to occur, there's an aspect in the conversation with one of the archangelics, is you're going to find in that realm, that new realm, the ability to materialize matter, change it from non-physical into physical. And one of the things about eating energy, that's what you're doing anyway when you go eat plants, you're eating all that light from the sun that's stored in the plant. But the ability to begin to create energy into a physical form as a support for the body. Now it gets really interesting, because in this evolutionary process, when you begin to play in the etheric body, it has a very different density configuration. And so this gets dicey. So in your next body, don't go there in any big way, but let's just decide you're going to have a next body. As you build that light body in Mastering Alchemy, as you get rid of who I'm not, and you begin to put yourself back together, and you bring in those 7 strands of DNA, none of which goes into the physical body. They all go into all the other bodies. And then you interlock all of the other bodies, the etheric, the mental, emotional, the causal body, the oversoul, higher self, Christed oversoul, all that's you. All of a sudden that all begins to be one alignment of awareness. You, physically in a body. That's going to be very, very different as we move forward in these next years. Planet's shifting, it's changing because it's time.
This one, Jim, is from Toki, who posted this on Facebook. Thank you for sharing this talk and all your work. I'm from Ukraine, and I'm living in the Middle East for the last 10 years. While I'm in Iraq and feeling safe here, paradoxically enough, all my family and many of my dear friends chose to stay in Ukraine despite the war. I care for them, and I care for all the people under the threat of violent death. I'd like to contribute and uplift the people. I'd like to know how to do it when many of them face physical threat, even though they're civilians. Could you please give me some guidance?
Yeah, I wish I could give you something that's going to be really helpful, but it's a challenge. When it gets to the place where it's physical and it's in your face, you don't have a lot of options. And so one of the things, this is not helpful, it's factual, but it's not helpful, is the role the Ukrainian people are playing in this opportunity for the world to choose differently is tremendous and painful and challenging. And watching the news and the number of people that just simply were happy living their life being disrupted at this level is outrageous. So I don't have any way of saying, how do you make that happen differently? The place where we're focusing here is in the level of love and light that you hold, that basically gives people around the world the opportunity to see what's going on and then not be numb, not be, just matter of fact, oh, it's really not my problem. This is everybody's problem. And it's in our face to choose differently. And so in a way, that grouping of people, that group agreement, Ukrainian population in that part of the world, basically saying, we will bring this to the forefront for you to choose. Talking about the 50,000 foot level. And so painful, but it's at a physical level now. If you can catch it at an intellectual, emotional level, there's lots of room to change things. But in the relationship to Ukraine, it's at that physical level.
It's kind of like, Jim, it reminds me of when we've said in the past how physical pain doesn't just start in the physical, it started in the mental, emotional bodies, and then held on long enough and charged enough, eventually it goes into the physical.
Yep, exactly.
This question is from Cherie. Has all this technological and 5D awareness not all happened before in previous ages of man, though?
This planet has had many civilizations on it, most forgotten. There's been massive technological orientations in the past on this planet. And in the nature of the game, it just keeps coming and growing in knowledge and wisdom to some extent. And then the civilization dies out for whatever reason. And then another one happens. And so the difference this time is we're at the point where, in a conversation a number of years ago with Metatron in a conference, He basically said the 3D world is now ended. And as of 12/12/12, there will never be another child born into this 3D world. Now, he wasn't talking physically, he was talking about the construct of the rules and structures of the game that we all just get born into and then we play. And he said that those rules and structures, as of this day, 12/12/12, no longer exist. Now, the challenge is you believe they exist, so therefore they exist. But the foundational part, it's like the rug underneath your feet that hold 3D, it's not there anymore. So it's a matter of shifting perspectives. And one of the things about mastering alchemy is once you start cleaning out your own backpack and you begin to recognize, I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. And then you begin to recognize that a lot of the attention points that you hold have no relevancy to you anymore because you're not playing the game. And then you lose your reference points and everybody goes, well, I don't know what to do with myself. But the new reference points are now being anchored. The new realm, this shift in consciousness, the etheric body, you're beginning to find, going back to part of the dream question earlier, the atmosphere of the earth is an electromagnetic field. Thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. And so where that two bodies, the mental and emotional body, are separated, I see something and well, that makes me angry. So I have a thought and the emotion of anger slams right into it. I'm out of control in reaction. When the mental emotional body comes back into one where you can say, gee, that's really not right. I could be really angry. I'm going to choose simply not to run anger through my body. That's a really different dynamic. Now, one of the things as this dynamic comes into play in your dream space too, your dream space or the astral plane, the atmosphere of the earth, is the mental emotional body of the earth. All the thoughts ever thought, ever thought, are stored in the atmosphere around the earth, the mental emotional body of the earth. One of the things about all the thoughts ever thought in a 3D world is you got a lot of anger, rage, resentment, murder, rape, etc., etc. And so if you're one of those, if you're in a very bad mood when you go to sleep and you pass through the astral plane, everything that's like the bad mood you're in kind of magnetically attracts to right where you are. And that's where a lot of people have challenges. I have bad dreams all the time. But one of the things that's happening is the electrostatic, the electromagnetic field of the earth is changing. And as it changes, and as we move into that 5D, part of the job of the elementals, and a big part of the job of the sun, without going there right now, is to alter and disrupt the mental emotional body that the earth is suspended in. And so as that clears out, and it's in the process, that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot more electrical activity in the atmosphere around the planet. You're beginning to see the magnetic construct change. If you're watching the solar flares in the 11-year cycle that we're in an upswing in the 11-year cycle, but the solar flares are outpacing the alignment that usually occurs. So you're getting more electrical storms, you're getting more magnetic solar winds hitting the planet, and your human body is beginning to be the effect of all of this. So on that case, grounding, center of your head, playing with your rose. Those of you who have played in park bench, and from that center point of the sphere, one of the things we said is create a concept of like the balloon, and you're just simply creating this internal pressure that is greater than the external pressure inside the sphere around you. And as you pay attention to that and allow this internal pressure to be greater, the effect on the physical, mental, emotional bodies is going to be less affected by the magnetic influences that the earth is going through right now. So that's a big deal. We didn't make a lot of it. We kept saying it over and over, but I'm saying it more clearly now. that exercise of getting into the sacred heart, into that quiet part of the octave, and basically having a sense of an exhale, creating a greater pressure. You don't feel it. It's not uncomfortable. It's just simply, it's like blowing up a balloon. There's more internal pressure than external pressure. Keep it really simple, and you're going to begin to find yourself in less anxiety and less disruption going forward.
Jim, this one is from Sherry from Vancouver Island, and Sherry's in level 1. Lately, I've been playing with, quote, dressing myself in the way I wish to be seen. I see the me that is playful and free. She is so excited, and she gives me so much comfort as I'm rising out of increased depression, pain, and anxiety. As I become her within my human, will I forget the old me completely?
Well, one of the things about all of this work, Mastering Alchemy, particularly in level 2, you start to get to the place where you recognize I'm not okay is not about me. In fact, it's not even mine. And you start to recognize those thoughts that I don't deserve, etc., aren't even my thoughts. And so as you begin to use the tools of level 2 to clean out a lot of the noise, a lot of the fears, the doubts, the uncertainties, the lack of seniority, you actually begin to forget a lot of the constructs that brought them into being, because they were never yours. You just stepped into a circumstance, and that circumstance had somebody having a bad lifetime at the moment, saying, I don't like you, you're not attractive, you're not worth anything, I'm not sure why I ever had you, and get out of my life. Well, that's pretty disruptive stuff to a kid. And so, and it wasn't yours, it has nothing to do with you. Level 2, you begin to recognize how to clean that out of your space. And as you clean that out of your space, the ability to begin to manage yourself on your terms and choose the life you want to experience on your terms begins to be much more available. The challenge people have is answering the question we've been asking more and more lately to pay attention to: what do you want? And the answer 90% of the time is, I don't know, I don't know. So this space of what do you want is a useful question. It's not about material things. It usually is simply, when you get really right down, I want to be happy. I want to enjoy myself. I'd like to laugh. Second question may be, what do you need? And keep that really simple. I need a place that I'm comfortable to live. I need food on my table that I enjoy eating. I wish to be around people where I have mutual respect and good communication. I laugh a lot. What do you need to make that happen? Because in real terms, people really don't need a lot of money. They don't need big fancy things. I'm not saying be skimpy and just get down to the basic shed in the woods. It's give to yourself. But what do you want, and what do I need to be comfortable in what I want? If you start to play in those two questions and allow yourself to give to yourself, you're going to find a lot of the noise goes away, and you're also going to begin to find that the question of what I want leads me into being, into new questions, into curiosity, into allowing that imagination to begin to come to the forefront. Imagination was stolen from you in the game of 3D right at the beginning. Stop lying, stop making up the stories, stop pretending, be real, grow up. All of the direction that basically took the little kid into the 3D. And so if you imagined in 3D the way you knew how to use imagination to basically imagine the apple appearing in your hand, and it happens to appear because that's how it works in 5D. It doesn't work that way in 3D. And so if I can destroy your imagination, I can control you, I can direct you, I can get you out of my space so I can have my own time. And that's the construct many of us were raised in. That's not who you are. That's not even your thoughts. And so you're going to lose some of your memory, but you're also going to begin to remember who you are.
Jim, this one is from Gregory in London. Could you please talk about how time is changing? I'm noticing it slowing down sometimes and speeding up at others.
Yeah, good observation. So actually, let me point you to, well, we're doing a lot of things lately.
We are.
Let me point you to next Thursday's free lecture about time, what it is and how it works. And let me see if I can answer that question there. But I will tell you that there are 5 constructs of present time. Not just linear time, past, present, future, and then you die. There's 5 aspects of present time. We'll talk about that in the free lecture on Thursday.
This is from Monica. You've talked a lot about 3D going away. What happens to those people who are unable to move into 5D?
So let's say this from that 50,000 foot level. What happens is 3D is going away. The game has been completed from a spiritual standpoint. There's nothing left that's undone in 3D. Everything has been touched on and brought into the vibrational field. A great part of all of that was a game. It's a game. Now, people don't like that word, but it's a game. From a spiritual point of view, it was a new creation. What if we created a game where we went into the game and we forgot who we are and we forgot who the creator is? And the game is about wandering around in all of these different animations and different vibrations and seeing how many new vibrations we can create while we don't remember anything, and then find our way home. Well, the game has been exceptionally successful. And the point of the game right now, a lot of it is to be, for many people that have come back, big beings have come back, and they're playing roles of poverty, they're playing roles of homelessness, they're playing roles that are outrageous roles. And their purpose is to understand the vibrational frequency of out of balance and make sure it never makes its way into the multidimensional reality. And so I lost track of the question, and you've already moved on.
Talk about 3D going away. What happens to those?
So those that are in 3D, right now, there are many people, so as this shift continues to expand, as you get more and more of these moments of decision, like this war with Russia and Putin, people are going to start remembering themselves more. And in the process of that, they're going to begin in 3D concepts. You're either going to play the game out for a little longer in 3D, or you're going to begin to choose, I don't like this game and I'm going to play it differently. I'm going to like myself. I'm going to simply give to others. I'm going to basically, instead of being me, I'm going to figure out how we evolve. But a lot of people are terrified. They are losing their sense of stability. Their construct of their well-being is threatened. And so they go into fear. And in that space, they argue for their limitations. They argue for their status quo and argue for the pieces that just keep them playing in the same space. And that 3D space is going to get more disruptive and more uncomfortable. And at the same time, this whole piece of park bench, this next round of 4 or 5 sessions of park bench, is how do you create the bridge to those people? How do you create the doorway and make it so brilliant that it's not even a choice, it's simply a knowingness to begin to let go of arguing for limitations and starting to step into that heart space where they begin to have the room to step into a 5D space. Does that happen overnight? No. Does it happen over a period of time to that group of 3D? Yes. And will it happen? Yes. Everybody's going home. Some will go home a little slower than others. Your role, if you're sitting here having this conversation with us, is to basically be able to recognize, I don't have to play this game of 3D. Find the tools, find the ability to create the vibrational field of well-being, and then engage from that vibrational field. That's your job. And I'm going to even go further to say that's your purpose to a great extent, because you wouldn't be in this conversation if it was anything less. And so how do you begin to hold this level of light in such a way that you can watch people that are in a lot of pain and even throwing energy at you and not engage with them for being bad or how dare you or I'm angry with you, I don't like you. How do you recognize that they are in great vulnerability? They're in tremendous pain. And how do you help them out? When you see the person standing on the corner saying, give me some money, as the little girl standing next to him, and you only have a $20 bill, a $5 bill in your pocket, give it to them. Because by the end of the day, that $5 bill reappears into your reality. And so this space of recognizing that level of pain and uplifting where possible, that's your task. That's what you're all about. And so where is it that, I'm just going to make a pitch for Master Alchemy, where is it that those of you who say, well, I don't know what to do, here's level 2 sitting right in front of you. How do I manage myself? How do I begin to be certain, capable, senior, gracious, kind, from a clear point of awareness and decision? That's your job. That's who you came to be. Can you manage yourself in that space and then command a presence that allows others to see that light? So that's why you're sitting here. That's why we're having this conversation. It's about who you are.
And that's a good answer to some of these questions people have about how can I help others. So that's a perfect answer for that, yeah. This is from Frank in Belgium, who's a new listener. Lately I've been off balance with anxiety for no reason, really. It feels like electricity in my body. Why and how do I stop it?
So here's these magnetic fields, this electromagnetic set of impulses that are coming about, this coronal mass ejections creating these huge magnetic G1, G2 wave patterns that are hitting the earth and hitting each of us individually. If you are grounded and able to kind of have a sense of yourself, level 1 tools, managing your side of the rose, what happens is you begin to have that electricity pass right through you. As you begin to go into a space of well-being, like me, you are not as receptive to that same electromagnetic field that's in your space. The anxiety is an electricity that's running through the nervous system. That level of electricity running through the nervous system, depending on how you look at it, is anxiety or is excitement. It's simply the exact same energy that's running through the body. If I can get excited, I can get proactive, I can basically find well-being in what I'm doing in the moment, you're going to find that anxiety simply begins to be possibilities, opportunities, something interesting. Maybe I should go read a book. Oh yeah, I can do this. It's an intentional shift that moves from anxiety to excitement. As you ground, as you begin to get a sense of some of the purpose that you're here to play, that anxiety will start to smooth out. But the magnetic field is altering, and that means your aura is altering, your energy field's altering, and it's all about uplifting. And so that space of the planet is being uplifted. If you are arguing for your limitations, this wave, the same wave, is disruptive, not destructive, disruptive. It begins to wobble in your space. And so, if you ever played with a top as a kid, you push it down, and it spins, and all of a sudden it's spinning by itself in perfect balance, and then all of a sudden there's a little wobble, stops, a little bigger wobble, and then pretty soon the thing winds out. If you try to control the wobble, you're going to be an unhappy camper. If you can simply step away from it and recognize that you can re-stabilize that gyroscope in the wobble, light, well-being, joy, happy, I appreciate myself, I like me, stabilizing the wobble, you're going to find that that whole construct of your alignment is going to change. Spiritual is very mechanical. oh, it's love and it feels good and it's kind and it's laughter. Yes, it's very constructive. It's simply when I align energy, when I command energy, when I simply begin to access more consciousness, energy is there to command. It's not there to be pushed around by.
Here's a funny comment from Melinda, who's one of our grads. She says, this Facebook Live is 10 hours long, right?
No, I have to go cut down some trees.
And then this question is from Lena. How does imagination play into this, and can we change timelines?
Oh, that's a good question. Timeline changing. So how would I answer that?
I could answer it. I could
Okay,
start.
good. Go for it.
We're changing timelines all the time. At every point, at every moment, we have a choice. Do we take this turn? Do we stop here? We're making choices all the time. And depending on that fork, you're going to experience a different timeline. Go for it.
That was really good.
It was,
that
wasn't
really
it?
good.
Yep.
There's this aspect of imagination, though, is really becoming exciting in my reality, watching what we're about to step into, are stepping into, is we've been in mastering alchemy, in the coursework and in the advanced classes, and the free lectures, and the morning conversations. We do a whole lot of stuff, you know that?
We do.
We've been talking about this octave, these waves of light, and this octave is like this brilliant, it's like a doorway into a lobby of a magnificent theater or a wonderful hotel or a gigantic amusement park. And you step into the space and it's like, whoa, this is really uplifting, very uplifting. That energetic field is such that when you begin to play with it, one of the pieces that is odd that came with the octave is gravity. It's like, what do you mean gravity? Gravity is different. Gravity is buoyant. Gravity is manageable. You still can play with gravity as you know it, but there's another aspect to gravity that's becoming accessible. It's the place where you can jump from one cloud to the other and you just float and you crash into the cloud and you laugh. It's the space, I used this the other day, if you ever watch squirrels, they jump 10 times the length of their body effortlessly. They don't even think about it. They're using a different gravity, and it's this gravity that's available where we're starting to talk. Gravity, in this case, allows for this buoyancy in space. When you start to recognize that ease, this octave is very elastic, it's flexible, it's fluid, it's got mobility to it, it's there to be used as tools of creation. In this octave, the ability to start to recognize imagination is the doorway to the creation you wish to experience. And it's in this octave, it's really fun playing in this fifth dimensional space. You just think something up and you step into it. There's not a hesitation, there's not a doubt, it's just simply, yeah, this is what I want. It's almost like you close your eyes and open your eyes and you're in that space. And so it's really fun because you all of a sudden have permission to be able to do what you were able to do with no restrictions. It's an evolution. It's really about using the tools to clean out the backpack. It's about kind of year 3 type of things. Year 2 of mastering alchemy is putting yourself back together, turning on the Eye of Horus, beginning to take all of your psychic abilities instead of clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsentience and 2 kinds of telepathies, all individual. They all come together. They coalesce into a place where you observe using all those abilities consciously and know what you're going to step into, what you want, or how you would like to experience yourself. This level of knowingness, begins to align with this internal guidance system in the heart. You know this space. It's a place where everybody says, let's go do this, and something says, I don't think so. Or the place where everybody goes, no, don't jump off the cliff, you're going to die. And you go, no, watch me. And if you notice that space, every time you come out on your feet, every time you listen to this space, you did something outrageous that nobody wanted to do. They told me when I was 19, you can't hitchhike to California with $30 in your pocket and then go find a college to go to. You can't do that. Yeah, I did. And it was marvelous. It was the most exciting thing I ever did, in a manner of speaking. See, that's that internal heart space. That's the space that simply says, imagine, and then jump. That's in this octave. That's as you begin to become conscious. Now, let me be really clear. The third dimension physical world, the tree, the window, the chair, the house, the car, everything in third dimension physicalness is identical in fifth dimensional physicalness right now. Same tree, same car, same chair. But what happens, you're not the same. And so when you start to have that imagination in the physicalness, in this space, the whole game starts to change because it can. And so that's what you're stepping into. It's extraordinary what you're stepping into. But you can't take your baggage with you on this journey. That's why this level 2 piece of work is so valuable, to understand that just because something happened in the past doesn't mean the past is fixed and that's how it is. Past isn't fixed. You can change the past all day long from a perspective of understanding how to change the past. That doesn't mean the event didn't happen. It just simply means how you have labeled the event, and it's my fault and I did it wrong. How is that helping you out right now? Do you like carrying that piece of baggage? So would you like to kind of remove that? Level 2. The end.
And with perfect timing, here is Francis saying, since starting level 2, I found myself in the presence of more and more people with differing political viewpoints than myself. I've actually been able to stay neutral and ask good questions that get the person thinking instead of defensive.
Nice. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you for these tools. So Jim, let's talk a little bit about how to be in a conversation with someone that has a strong, different point of view than you do.
Well, so here's 3D versus 5D. So if you are able to, let's assume you've done level 1 and level 2. You have the tools, you know how to stay on your side of the rose. Basically, this is my space, and that's Shakespeare's theater, to entertain me. When you kind of have that awareness, you're grounded in the center of your head, you cleaned out some of your baggage, and somebody starts talking from a place that's very counterculture, different to your belief system, to the point where it's even rude, it's insulting, it's talking about people in the most derogatory ways, and you're standing there with them and they're talking to you. And so the first thing is, can I stand here and find neutral? Big piece of that. Can I simply be in neutral? Now, I don't like what I'm hearing. I'm not even in agreement with what I'm hearing, but I don't have to punch this guy out, and I don't have to go into reaction. What happens is you've got a number of choices. One is you can simply say, that's interesting. You know, I've got to go now. I hope you have a nice day, and walk away. You're not going to change that person by pushing against them or arguing with them. Another choice is simply saying, that's interesting. And I know you don't like those people, but did you see that woman that was just put on the United States Supreme Court? She seemed awfully intelligent, don't you think? You basically can confront them with a opportunity to respond to something rather than arguing something. In a way, one of the interesting things, if that's the kind of person that you're talking about and that you're around, before you're around them, because you know you're going to be around them, come up with some responses. So simply, gee, black woman put on the Supreme Court, brilliant mindset. How do what do you think about that? You don't challenge it. It's just like, that's interesting. What do you think about that? Or how is that possible? So come up with 3, 4 types of answers to what those kind of people, whatever that means, are in your face. The other thing you do is just simply very successfully say, okay, that's really interesting, or okay, I can think about that. No argument, completely neutral. What begins to happen is they lose interest in you because you're not responding. Or what happens is because you're not responding, you stop finding those kind of people coming into your space. Yeah, but what about if it's my husband or my wife or my mother or my father? Simply in that place, begin to decide, I'm going to hold a higher level of vibration. I'm just going to say, okay, that's nice. And not engage, but basically hold a level of light that gives them an opportunity to begin to change. That's a strategy. Every time I'm around them, I'm going to simply have a sense of being brighter and kinder. Not going to argue. More often than not, they basically stop talking about those things because you're not playing the game. It takes two to play a game. If they throw a rock and you catch it, you're playing the game. If you respond with another rock, you're playing the game. Stop playing the game comfortably for yourself, and the game will go away. Pretty much how it works.
And Natalie follows up on that. My challenge is that I live with a person who isn't aware of his spiritual side. How can I help him see his worth?
By holding that level of light. Simply, there's places where we've talked about this before, create 3 bubbles. There's a me bubble, there's a you bubble, and there's a we bubble. And in the me bubble, I like to ride my bike. Roxanne doesn't like to ride bikes. In Roxanne's bubble, she likes to do really weird things. I don't do weird things. But what happens is when she goes to the gym and works out and comes home and says, gee, I held 15 pounds out for 30 minutes and I feel really strong today, even though I'm not doing that, it's like, wow, that's really impressive, Roxanne. And it's looking good on you. And boy, that's tremendous. Not my thing. It could be, actually. I go ride my bike and she comes back and says, how many miles you go? Went out 70 miles today. She says, wow, that's really great. She doesn't ride a bike. There's other places where we have a we space. We're talking about gardening and building hydroponics and talking about growing. It's a we space. We have a lot of things there. But where somebody doesn't have the same alignments with you, validate them for their alignments or simply ignore their alignments. Don't argue with them. Where you can simply uplift them, do that. Where there's a we space, husband, wife, find the space that you can enjoy. And then where you can say, I'm not interested in your political point of view on this. Let's just agree you don't raise political view. I won't talk about X, and we'll spend much more time enjoying each other in we. That's a conversation sometimes that has to be had in order to basically be able to be in a comfortable place in a relationship.
Jim, here's a good question from Jelaine, who is a grad, I think. The name is extremely familiar. How to run a 5D business in 3D?
Oh, it's a great game to play. So, do you like your business? Or is it something where you live in 3D saying, gee, I'm stuck in it, this is all I have, I don't know what else to do, I'll go to work again in the morning. That's a 3D space. If you really like your business, and you basically go into the business from everything we've been talking about and enjoy the business, what happens in this space is just hold the concept of, I would like to create it so I have even more fun. Basically create that concept. Don't answer the concept, just create the concept and then hold your attention on it. It begins to be pretty amazing. You get a piece of junk mail that says, you know, this is available. And you say, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So what makes the business exciting to you? And how do you make that excitement visible to other people who have a need for what you do? It's really all about you. It's not about the business. It's about the energetics of people coming to, you know, your little popsicle store and going, God, I really love popsicles. I haven't had one for years. without that energy, they walk right by the popsicle store saying, oh, I haven't had popsicle for years. And they keep walking. So it's really about how do you create the you that's excited about what you do. Some people would say, well, I don't like my business. Well, then maybe it's time to think about getting out of that business. What else can you do? What would you like to do that would be of value to you? Misery is optional in life. In 3D, it's optional. In 5D, it doesn't exist.
And I'd like to add to that, and yes, she is a grad, Mary just told me. So it's really about how you set the energy, and you have all the MA tools. How do you set the energy for the day, for your business? It's like Jim and I used to have a brick and mortar, and we'd have these events where the public would come in and get to know the tools and what we were doing. And before we would have this event, we would set the energy at hello.
Yep.
And welcome. And we would put a little, I know this is going to sound silly, a little bubble machine on the top of the building, and all the bubbles would flow out and with little hellos that would hit people in the head. And these events were very successful, and we got lots of new friends from it. So
Yeah.
how do you set the energy? Jim and I like to think that Mastering Alchemy is a business, 5D business that exists in 3D. So we're very conscious of what we personally, the energy that we personally are holding, and of that most power forward. Hello.
Yeah. In Mastering Alchemy, we don't really do much advertising. In fact, we don't do virtually any advertising. We have a newsletter that goes out that says hello, and we have these. And there are thousands and thousands of people that have passed through Mastering Alchemy, and it really is just simply a hello.
And it's about how do we make this work? How do we make you successful? Because if you're successful, then we're successful. It's 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
Jim, this is a question from Denny. He's asked this twice, and I've kind of been resistant to ask his question because it sounds too salesy to me.
Okay.
But after the second time, I thought I should ask his question. So Denny is asking, Denny is in level 2. How will level 3 further my progress in Mastering Alchemy as the levels 1 and 2 have changed me positively?
So, so I said this earlier, but let me reiterate. So one of the things that happens with level 1 is people say quite often, when I started playing with this, it's like I knew this was real. Meaning, you know, I'd never fit in. I don't think I should be in this body. I'm not even supposed to be on this planet. Why am I here? Nothing seems to work. And I know there's more. And so the comment generally is, oh, wow, I knew there was more. I knew this is real. Level 2 begins to be the place where you start to use those tools and recognize that a great amount of what I think and what I believe isn't even mine. And a great amount of what I think and what I believe I hold myself hostage to. And I don't like it. I'm not okay. I don't deserve. And level 2, I realize there are a set of tools and an awareness that allows me to recognize this stuff I'm carrying around isn't even mine. And the tools allow me to simply dust off the countertop with this noise that I've been treating myself as a hostage. Level 2 also lets you begin to recognize I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. And all this noise is going on all around me, things like CNN and Fox that used to pull me in, culture wars, and that's not even who I am. And so I lose a lot of my attention points in that place. Now, kind of the year 1 work is about how do I reposition and how do I begin to build myself in a way that I can know myself. And one of the things that happens there is you begin to come to a place, because you've just lost your reference points, that if I sit quietly and I just hold my attention on what I want, it comes to me. Everything comes to you. It's not about, oh, I got to have it right now. There's no charge in it. It's simply being able to recognize, okay, this is what I would like to have happen, and it comes to me. You first recognize this coincidence. You say, oh, I just thought that the other day. And I just asked that the other day. And then somebody calls and says, let's do this. I was just thinking about that. Comes to you. Then kind of in the year 2 body of work, this is a shift because now I start to put myself back together to remember who I am. And in that process, you start to, the Eye of Horus, for example, at a much more integrated level, even though that becomes aware to you in level 2. But it's at this level 3 level where you also start to have engagement with that etheric body. You begin to recognize and draw to you consciously the mental, emotional, causal, oversoul, Christed oversoul part of you. And you start to function within that. You begin to bring these 7 strands of DNA into all of those bodies. The light body is an integrated system. It's not a body. It just puts all of that together, the wiring, the elevated state of consciousness, so you can function as the soul in the body, function very much as the higher self rather than the rational mind. So it's a progression, it's a journey. It's not a, come hang out for 2 weeks and we'll give you a certificate and you'll be an ascended being. It doesn't work that way.
And Denny, just to let you and everybody know that when all the programs that are in the store, there's a link on that page that is a PDF that you can download that lists all the topics of all the sessions. So I would suggest really looking at that, and your internal guidance and system will know if you're ready to go on to take the next step or not. So look at that. Look at the list of the topics for all the sessions.
Let me just say one more. Most of you know we don't, like we said, we don't sell this. And we don't even in these sessions really say, hey, hurry up and get to do this. But I'll tell you that these changes that are unfolding are really exciting changes. And this shift of consciousness is happening. I said this the other night, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is a live performance. And if you're sitting there saying, well, I'll do level 2 next year. No, level 2 may not be here next year. Roxanne and I may retire. What?
What?
So this is, you're in the game right now.
Jim, I just realized we are almost half an hour over time. So I don't know how that happened. So can we wind it up?
Sure. So I don't have a lot else to say. This is, you're going to see disruption. You're going to see things just happen. Things like the central banks around the world, they are in really deep doo-doo. They are crossing their fingers that they are able to make an adjustment. And whatever happens in that context is all going to filter down to our individual lives. One way or the other. I don't mean to make that bad. It's just new changes are going to happen. So if you're at a place where you're wanting to do something different, this would be a good place to do it. But pretty much everything we just talked about, staying on your side of the rose, going to sleep in that octave, beginning to hold that level of light that you are experiencing, those of you playing in the park bench, as you step into it. Tomorrow in the park bench, we're going to really anchor that aspect of light in the heart to be conscious. Okay, this is what we're talking about. In that park bench tomorrow, this is how you basically, integrate that neurological structure in the nervous system in the brain with the neurological structure of the earth. It's really interesting things that we're doing on this journey, and it appears that more of this information just keeps filtering down into these programs. So with that, I don't really have anything else to say. I hope this was useful and of value, and continue to look forward to playing with you. So with that, go off, have yourself a good day wherever you are in the world. Blessings.
Have a great weekend.